Welcome to this explainer. Okay, we are going to dive straight into a totally baffling historical mystery, and it starts in these really quiet interrogation rooms back in 1945. It's just after the close of the Second World War, and American military historians are sitting across the table from captured Wehrmacht generals, basically asking them to evaluate the formidable American arsenal. Naturally, they expected to hear all about the massive Sherman tanks, or the devastating P-47 fighter bombers, or maybe the heavy artillery that was turning battlefields into literal moonscapes. But the answer they kept getting, over and over again, was entirely unexpected.
It's a massive paradox, isn't it? The guys who literally built the terrifying Tiger tank, an absolute masterpiece of armored warfare, were confessing that their greatest fear was an unarmored scout car. U.S. Army historian Hugh Cole, who had actually served as General Patton's historical officer, sat with these generals and heard them state point blank that this tiny, open-topped vehicle was the single most impressive tool the Allies possessed. No way, right?
And to make things even weirder, let's look at the specs, because they are incredibly underwhelming. A Jeep weighed a mere 2,400 pounds, it had zero armor, absolutely no mounted cannon, and produced just 60 horsepower. I mean, that is actually less horsepower than a standard German staff car at the time. It was this completely unassuming little machine that cost about $738 to make. That was less than the price of a mid-range piano back then. Yet somehow, this little vehicle was the ultimate threat on the battlefield. So what exactly was going on?
Let's get into Section 1, the myth of the Blitzkrieg, the reality of German mobility. To figure this puzzle out, we actually need to bust a huge misconception about how the German war machine operated. We always picture this fully mechanized, unstoppable lightning war slicing across Europe, right? Well, it turns out that was largely a myth. If you look at the German Army and Waffen-SS divisions in November 1943, only 52 were armored or motorized. The other 270 divisions, which is over 80% of the entire German army, moved at the speed of shoe leather or hooves.
When you put the numbers side by side, the logistical gap is just staggering. A standard German infantry division went to war relying on roughly 5,500 horses to pull their artillery, haul their ammo, and move their supplies. If that division needed to move, it was going about 4 miles per hour on a good day. Compare that to a single, standard American infantry division. They were equipped with roughly 1,440 motorized vehicles, including hundreds of Jeeps. The Americans were operating on a completely fundamentally different logistical paradigm.
Moving on to Section 2, the speed of decisions. Faster firepower.
Now, making a massive amount of vehicles is one thing, but the Jeep weaponized something far deadlier than just speed of movement. It weaponized the speed of decisions. And the origin story of this thing is absolutely wild. In the summer of 1940, the U.S. Army wanted a prototype of a light recon vehicle, and they demanded it in just 49 days. A freelance engineer named Carl Prost took on this seemingly impossible task for a nearly bankrupt company called American Bantam. He started sketching on July 17th. 2 days later, he had a complete design that actually met the Army's absurd specs. And exactly 49 days later, a working prototype was successfully tested. Probst was paid just $200 for this work, but his 2-day sketch became the template for over 640,000 machines.
Here is the real kicker, though. The Jeep's true superpower wasn't its ruggedness or its four-wheel drive. The real weapon was what was sitting on the back seat. A compact FM radio. Specifically, units like the SCR-619 that could transmit and receive while the vehicle was physically moving. So think about it. A Jeep was essentially a highly mobile communications hub, driven by a sergeant or a lieutenant who didn't need to ask anyone's permission to move.
Let's walk through exactly how this broke the German way of war. Picture a 23-year-old American lieutenant parked on a ridge. Step 1. He spots a German column forming in the distance. Step 2. He just reads a 6-digit grid coordinate into his radio handset. Step 3. In just 3 minutes, every single howitzer in his battalion is firing on that exact target. Meanwhile, the German forward observer, he often had to use his own 2 legs to move to a new vantage point and then send a runner or physically lay telephone wire across open ground just to communicate. By the time that German message actually arrived, the American unit had already driven off somewhere else. The Jeep literally collapsed for the time between spotting a threat and eliminating it.
Which brings us to Section 3, stealing the advantage. Operation Grief.
The Germans definitely recognized this devastating American advantage. They were getting beaten by it. So, getting desperate to mimic American mobility, famed commando Otto Skorzeny launched Operation Grief.
This was a crazy plan involving 2,000 English-speaking German soldiers slipping behind Allied lines, fully dressed in American uniforms. But the real centerpiece of this massive deception wasn't captured tanks or heavy trucks. It was captured jeeps. They realized that a jeep driven by men in American uniforms was the absolute perfect Trojan horse to move invisibly behind enemy lines, cut wires, and spread completely false orders.
But look at this industrial chasm. It is insurmountable. America produced over 640,000 jeeps during the war. Meanwhile, when Skorzeny requested 150 captured jeeps for this elite mission, the German military couldn't even scrounge them up. Despite years of fighting and capturing Allied equipment all over the place, they could only give him fewer than a dozen. Just to put that into perspective for a second, American assembly lines were pumping out 150 brand new jeeps every 3 hours.
Now, Operation Grief did cause some intense paranoia for a few days. It even prompted the Allies to lock General Eisenhower under armed guard just to be safe. But the operation ultimately completely unraveled, and it unraveled because of one fundamental truth. The Germans tried to steal the machine, but they couldn't capture the system. The true power of the Jeep wasn't the metal, it wasn't the rubber, it wasn't the four-wheel drive. The power was the decentralized military culture that actually trusted its lowest-ranking officers to make rapid decisions on the fly.
And that leads us perfectly into Section 4, the faster nervous system, the ultimate decider.
This brings up a really powerful concept that ties all of this history together. Think of an army exactly like a human body. The infantry is the muscle, the artillery is the fist, the tanks are the armored skin, right? But the military nervous system is that vital web of observers, communicators, and decision-makers that allows the army to instantly see a threat, send a signal, and adapt. Because without a fast nervous system, even the strongest, most heavily armored body just stands there swinging blindly in the dark.
When you put the two systems side by side, the architectural differences are profound. The Germans focused on building these masterpiece, isolated weapons, like the Tiger tank. Their authority was strictly top-down. You needed permission for every single move. And their communication basically processed information at the speed of 1918, using horses, runners, and physical wire that broke all the time. The Americans, on the other hand, built an overwhelmingly faster, radio-equipped nervous system. It relied on mass-produced, interconnected tools, decentralized authority that actually trusted local officers, and communication moving at the speed of 1944.
If you want the ultimate proof of this fast nervous system in action, just look at General George S. Patton's famously impossible 48-hour pivot during the Battle of the Bulge. He promised General Eisenhower he could disengage 250,000 men, pivot them 90 degrees in the dead of winter, and counterattack. It sounded completely insane, but Patton wasn't bluffing. His Jeep-mounted scouts were already out there mapping the frozen routes ahead. Artillery, supply drops, medical nodes, all of it was pre-positioned rapidly via Jeep. The entire army picked up and redeployed in just 2 days because every single node in that web had wheels, and because of that, the siege of Bastogne was lifted in record time.
So, tying it all back to those quiet interrogation rooms in 1945, one captured German officer really hit the nail on the head. He said, "You gave every sergeant the mobility of a general." That is exactly it. It wasn't about giving every sergeant the firepower of a general. It was about giving them the mobility to be in the right place, see the situation clearly, and act on it immediately without waiting for permission from a headquarters sitting miles and miles away. It was all about empowering the people closest to the problem.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to think about how this applies to us today, way beyond the battlefield. Take a look at your own organization. Do you rely on isolated masterpieces, or are you building a faster nervous system? Are you just obsessing over building better individual tools, or are you actively empowering your entire system, your team, your employees, to decide and adapt faster? Because a perfect decision made too late is always going to lose to a good decision made right now. Keep that in mind, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.